The Millionaire CEO offered his entire month's salary to the cleaner to translate an ancient document. He scoffed right in her face, dead sure it was impossible, but she knew something that would absolutely shatter his arrogance forever. "I'll give you my whole month's salary if you can translate this." Richard Thompson held up the yellowed paper above his head. The boardroom froze. Marina stopped dead, mop in hand. Water dripped onto the marble floor. She looked up. "I'm talking to you, cleaner." The 5 executives at the table turned their heads. Frank Lewis let out a short chuckle. Julia Maxwell raised her phone, starting to film. Richard descended the glass staircase. His Italian shoes clicked loudly. He stopped a foot away from her. "Know what this is? Medieval Latin. Even my private translator couldn't crack it." Marina looked at the document. Gothic script covered the parchment. Strange symbols on the margins. Ink faded with time. "Why would I do that, sir?" "Because you need the job." He smiled. "And because I find it amusing." Frank slowly clapped his hands. The other executives laughed. Danielle, the secretary, kept her eyes down in the corner of the room. Richard brought the paper closer to Marina's face. The scent of mold rose from it. 30 seconds. Give me one word. Just one correct word. Marina's heart pounded. Her hands tightened on the mop handle. She knew that kind of text. She knew every symbol, every grammatical structure. Then he shook the paper. Nothing, just as I imagined. Julia zoomed in with her camera. Frank took a photo. 3 executives whispered bets. Richard threw the document onto the glass table. The sound echoed. "Pathetic. People like you shouldn't even be looking at this." He turned his back, starting up the stairs. The whole room watched him. Marina took a deep breath. Her hands trembled. Richard stopped on the last step, turned his head. "I'll give you my entire salary for this month. $100,000 if you translate 3 lines." The silence cut through the air. "But when you fail, you'll resign in front of everyone." Frank guffawed loudly. Julia adjusted her focus. The executives leaned forward. Marina closed her eyes. The mop clattered to the floor with a metallic thud. How could this man know she'd translated texts 1,000 times more complex than this? The musty smell of the parchment filled her nostrils. That specific odor of iron gall ink mixed with cured leather. Marina knew that smell. She was 17 when she first encountered it in the University of Sydney library. Her father held an 11th century manuscript. His fingers trembled with emotion. "Look, Marina. Classical Aramaic with Latin influence." She leaned in. The letters danced on the page. Her father pointed to each symbol. "One day you'll teach this. Promise me?" "I promise, Dad." That promise had changed everything. She devoured linguistics, Latin, Greek, Aramaic, ancient Hebrew. By 23, she was an assistant lecturer. By 30, she was coordinating the ancient languages department. Her office at the university overlooked the garden. Shelves of rare books lined the walls. Students queued up to attend her classes. The dean called her the pride of the institution. Marina was lecturing on medieval manuscripts when the phone rang. "Professor Silva, it's the hospital. Your father had a stroke." She ran through the corridors. The taxi took forever. When she arrived, he was already gone. The funeral cost more than she had. The experimental medicines they'd tried in his last days had consumed everything. She sold the apartment, sold the car, sold the rare books he'd collected his entire life. It wasn't enough. Hospital bills arrived every week. Debt collectors called in the dead of night. She asked the university for a loan denied. Asked colleagues, everyone vanished. 3 months later, the letter arrived. Budget cuts. Made redundant. Marina left the university carrying a box with her belongings. 20 years of a career packed into cardboard. She tried other universities. None hired her. Tried private schools. They asked for recent experience. Tried freelance translations. They paid peanuts. And late. The rent was due. She moved into a tiny room in a rundown boarding house. 10 square meters. Shared bathroom. Her framed diploma stayed under the bed. 6 months later, she saw the ad. Vacancy for a cleaning assistant. Immediate start. She took it. The sound of laughter brought her back. Frank was slapping the table. Richard stood with his arms crossed, that arrogant smile on his face. Marina opened her eyes. The luxurious boardroom, the fallen mop, the parchment on the glass table. 7 years cleaning the floors of this building. Invisible, silent, burying who she once was. But this document changed everything. Richard didn't know who he was talking to. She took a step towards the table. Marina walked to the table. Her old shoes creaked in the silence. She reached out for the parchment. Richard slapped his hand on the document first. "Ah, no, you haven't agreed to the terms yet." She stopped, her fingers inches from the paper. I need to see the text up close. You need to accept the bet first. He tilted his head. $100,000 if you translate it. Fired if you fail. Yes or no. The executives gathered around the table. Frank crossed his arms. Julia kept her phone filming. Two others sat on the edge of their chairs. Marina looked at the document, saw the symbols upside down, recognized the structure. This wasn't just medieval Latin. It had Aramaic influence. 11th century clerical notation. How much time do I have? Richard laughed. Time? Do you think this is a university exam? Frank slapped the table. She doesn't even know where to begin, boss. 5 minutes, Marina said. Her voice came out firm. Give me 5 minutes with the document. 5 minutes? Richard leaned in. My specialist asked for 3 weeks. He picked up the parchment, held it against the light. The letters became translucent. You have 30 seconds, standing right here, in front of everyone. Marina felt her stomach clench. 30 seconds wasn't enough. She needed to examine the symbols, see the marginal notations, identify the specific dialect. This is unfair. Unfair. Richard threw his head back. A cleaner asking for justice. How ironic. The executives laughed. Frank pulled out his phone, started recording too. Marina took a deep breath, stretched out her hand again. Then, at least let me hold the document. Richard looked at her, at the parchment, back at her. All right. He extended the paper. Marina held it by the edges. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from contained rage. She turned the document over. The light from the crystal chandelier illuminated the letters. Her eyes scanned the lines. First word, testamentum. Second, domin. The third had an Aramaic symbol interspersed. Time's up. Marina looked up. It hasn't even been 15 seconds. It has. Richard snatched the parchment from her hands. And you didn't say anything because you wouldn't let me finish reading? Finish reading? Frank guffawed. She can't even read, boss. Julia zoomed in on Marina's face. Two executives whispered. One made a throat-slitting gesture. Richard put the document inside a leather folder, closing it with a metallic click. You know what your problem is? He walked in a circle around her. People like you always think they can do more than they're capable of. Marina spun, following his movement. Her fists clenched. People like me? Lower class? Uneducated? He stopped in front of her. You watch TV and think you know things. Frank stood up, approaching Marina from behind. It's true. The other day I saw a cleaner trying to give her opinion on economics. Ridiculous, Julia said, still filming. Richard slapped the leather folder. This document is worth more than you'd earn in 10 lifetimes. And you think you can just look at it and understand? He opened the folder again, took out the parchment, held it high. I'll make it easier. Just translate the first line. One line, I'll give you. Marina looked at the paper. She saw the words even from a distance. The first line read, Testamentum Dominostre de Sacris Reliquis Anno M. CCIL Dedicatum. She could translate it, she could say word for word, but something held her back. What if I get the first line wrong? If you get it wrong, Richard lowered the paper. Then you don't just resign, you leave here without this month's pay. The executives made noises. Frank applauded slowly. Julia changed her camera angle. Marina felt sweat on the back of her neck. Her salary was $1,200. That's what she paid for her room in the boarding house. Her food, her blood pressure, medication, that wasn't in the initial agreement. Agreement? Richard scoffed. Do you think you're in a position to negotiate an agreement? Frank moved closer. She felt his breath on her neck. Just accept it or go back to scrubbing floors. Marina closed her eyes. Her mind raced. She could translate that in her sleep. She was absolutely certain. But what if she failed? What if, after 7 years of hiding, she tried to prove who she was and fell short? Doubt crept in like poison. What if her memory had failed? What if 7 years without practice had erased the knowledge? What if she translated it and Richard claimed it was wrong anyway? He controlled everything here. The document, the witnesses, the money. Are you going to stand there all day? Marina opened her eyes. Richard fidgeted with his wristwatch, a gold Rolex. I'm waiting. She looked at the parchment, looked at the executives, looked at Danielle in the corner of the room who kept her head down. If she tried and failed, she'd lose everything. The job, the salary, the only thing she still had. But if she didn't try, she'd live the rest of her life wondering. Marina took a deep breath. Her hands stopped trembling. I accept. Richard smiled, that predatory smile. Excellent. Then translate it now. He held the parchment in front of her, so close she could smell the mold. The first line, out loud, in front of everyone. Frank turned on his phone's flash. Julia moved closer. The 5 executives formed a semicircle, all with phones pointed. Marina looked at the words. Her heart beat erratically. The first line was clear, but her mouth wouldn't open. What if she was wrong? Marina opened her mouth. No sound came out. Richard moved closer. The parchment almost touched her face. Waiting for divine inspiration, Frank let out a loud laugh. The other executives joined in. Julia kept her phone focused on Marina's face. Look at her face, boss. Already given up? Richard lowered the document, walked back to the head of the table, sat in the leather chair, crossed his legs. You know what I see when I look at you? He tilted his head. A woman in her mid-40s, scrubbing floors, no family, no future. Marina clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. I bet you didn't even finish high school. I did, she said, her voice barely a whisper. What? I didn't hear you. I finished high school. Richard clapped his hands slowly 3 times. What an impressive achievement. Did anyone else here finish high school? Everyone raised their hands. Frank whistled. An executive tossed a pen on the table. See? Even the intern has a uni degree. Richard adjusted his tie. But you've cleaned toilets your whole life, I imagine. Marina's cheeks burned. She kept her eyes fixed on the marble floor. Her own reflection stared back at her. And that uniform? Frank pointed. Looks like you picked it out of the bin. The executives laughed louder. One of them took a photo. The flash lit up the room. Richard stood up, walked to the glass window. Sydney sparkled 40 floors below. You know the difference between you and me? He turned. I pay 15 grand a month just for strata. You probably live in a shack. Marina raised her eyes, met his gaze. For 3 seconds, she maintained eye contact. It's not a shack. It's a boarding house. Ah, my apologies. Richard made an exaggerated bow. A boarding house? How sophisticated. Frank and Julia guffawed. 2 executives slapped the table. A third made a gesture as if giving charity. How much do you pay? 300? 400? 500? Marina responded. $500. Richard walked back to her. I spend more than that on a bottle of wine. He picked up the parchment again, waved it in front of her. And you really thought you could translate this? Something worth millions? Marina took a deep breath. Her legs trembled. I can translate it. Silence fell like a stone. Richard stopped waving the paper. Frank raised his eyebrows. Julia zoomed in all the way. You can translate it? Richard pronounced each word slowly. I can. Then why haven't you translated it? Marina swallowed hard, tried to find the right words. I need more time to time. Richard threw the parchment on the table. The paper slid to the edge, the universal excuse of incompetence. He turned to the executives. Are you seeing this? She can translate it. She just needs time. He made air quotes with his fingers. Like that bloke who says he can play the piano. Just needs lessons first. The room exploded with laughter. Frank clapped an executive on the shoulder. Julia covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook. Marina felt something rising in her throat. Pure, burning anger. I'm not lying. No? Richard crossed his arms. Then prove it. He pushed the parchment towards her. The paper spun on the glass table. One word. Give me one correct word, and I'll consider you tried. Marina looked at the document. The first word, testamentum. Testament. She knew. She was absolutely certain. Testamentum. In English, it means Richard interrupted. Testament. Richard tilted his head, looked at Frank. She just guessed testament. He chuckled. The most obvious word in any Latin text. Frank opened Google on his phone. Even Google Translate gets that one, boss. Exactly. Richard picked up the parchment again. You literally guessed the easiest word in the entire document. Marina shook her head. I didn't guess. I know Latin. I can translate the rest. You know Latin? Richard drawled, mockingly. Of course. Where did you learn? At cleaner school? The executives exploded again. One spat out coffee from laughing so hard. Julia had to hold her phone with both hands because she was trembling. Or was it the University of YouTube? Frank added. Marina took a step back, then another. Her whole body was shaking. I actually studied ancient languages. You were what? Richard approached quickly, stood inches away. A professor? A translator? She didn't answer. The words caught in her throat. Just as I imagined. He walked back to his chair. Just another cleaner with delusions of grandeur. Frank put away his phone. Julia stopped recording. The executives started to disperse. The fun was over. But you know what's worse? Richard opened a drawer, took out a white envelope. You actually believed you had a chance. He threw the envelope on the table. Your pay, you can take it. And you don't need to come back tomorrow. Marina looked at the envelope, then at Richard. You're firing me? I'm setting you free. He smiled. so you can pursue those incredible opportunities your talent deserves." Frank chuckled softly. Julia shook her head with fake pity. The executives were already back at their laptops. Marina picked up the envelope. Her hands trembled so much, she almost dropped it. "What about the challenge?" "What challenge?" Richard opened his laptop. "You failed in the first second. You didn't translate anything, but you're dismissed." Danielle appeared beside Marina, touched her arm gently. "Come on, let's get your things." Marina didn't move, looked at the parchment on the table. Those words she knew so well, that language she commanded better than her own native tongue. "Still here?" Richard looked up from his laptop. "Security." Danielle's walkie-talkie crackled. Marina finally turned, walked towards the door. Her legs barely supported her body. As she left, she heard Richard's voice, and that's why everyone stays in their place. The glass door closed behind her. The sound echoed down the empty corridor. No one had defended her. Marina pushed open the door to the women's bathroom. The fluorescent light hummed. She locked the door, leaned her back against the cold tiles. The white envelope was crumpled in her hand. $1,200, her last pay. She turned on the tap. Water ran. Marina splashed it on her face. Once, twice, 3 times. When she looked up, she saw her reflection in the mirror. Graying hair tied in a messy bun, deep circles under her eyes. Faded blue uniform with the company name on the pocket. 45 years old, looking 60, 7 years in that building, invisible. Marina opened the envelope, counted the notes. $200 were missing. Equipment breakage deduction. She'd never broken anything. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. A message from the boarding house. "Rent overdue. Please regularize by Friday." Today was Thursday. She put the envelope away, turned on the tap again. The water was still running when there was a knock on the door. "Marina, it's Danielle. Coming." "Can I come in?" Marina unlocked the door. Danielle entered with a plastic bag, her things from the locker. Inside was an old jacket, an empty lunchbox, a worn-out book, advanced Latin grammar. The cover was falling off. Marina picked up the book, the yellowed pages, notes in the margins in her handwriting from 20 years ago. On the first page, a dedication, "To my daughter, who always flew higher, with love, Dad." It wasn't her father who had written it. It was herself, a lie she told herself. Her father couldn't write, but he was the one who bought the book with the money he saved washing cars. "You didn't deserve that," Danielle said softly. Marina closed the book, pressed it against her chest. But it happened. He's like that with everyone, and no one does anything. Danielle lowered her eyes. "We need the job." Marina put the book back in the bag, picked up her jacket. It was time to leave and never come back. But something held her back. She had seen the parchment, read the first 3 lines. That wasn't just medieval Latin. It had the structure of a clerical testament, 11th century legal language, mixed with liturgical Aramaic. She knew that style exactly. She had translated dozens of similar documents at the university for museums, for collectors, for international auctions. Richard was wrong, and she could prove it. "Danielle, is that document still in the room?" "It is. The secretary's got it." Richard left it on the table. "Why?" Marina opened the bag again, took out the book, leafed to chapter 12. There it was. Examples of medieval clerical notation, symbols she had seen on the parchment. "Do you have access to that room?" "I have the master key. But what time does he leave?" "Marina, you are fired. If he catches you there, what time?" Danielle looked at her watch. "He has dinner with investors at 8. Leaves here at 7:30. It was 6:15. Marina put the book away, closed the bag. "I need to see that document again." "Why?" "He won't let you. He offered $100,000 in front of witnesses." Marina grabbed Danielle's arm. "Did you film it?" "Julia filmed it. And she still has the video." Danielle thought for 3 seconds. "She posts everything in the executives group chat. It should be there." Marina let go of her arm, walked to the sink, splashed water on her face again. When she looked in the mirror, this time she saw something different. Not a defeated cleaner, but a university professor who had been disrespected. "Can you get me into the room when he leaves?" "Marina, this is crazy. Can you?" Danielle held the doorknob. She was about to leave, stopped. 20 years working here. "He never remembered my birthday. Not once." She turned around. "At 7:30 I'll text you. You come up. You'll have 10 minutes before the night cleaning crew arrives." Marina nodded. Danielle left alone. Again, Marina opened the book to the marked page. Aramaic symbols interspersed with Latin, that was the key. If she could photograph the document, she could translate it word for word, and then she would return, not as a cleaner, but as the expert Richard so desperately needed. Her phone vibrated. 7:28. Message from Danielle. He left. Come now. Marina put the book in the bag, left the bathroom. The corridor was empty. Her legs weren't trembling anymore. It was now or never. Marina climbed the service stairs. Her footsteps echoed on the concrete. She reached the 40th floor. The metal door creaked when she opened it. Danielle waited in the corridor, held a golden key. 10 minutes. No more than that. She unlocked the glass door. The boardroom was dark. The crystal chandelier cast long shadows. Marina entered, went straight to the table. The parchment wasn't there. Where's the document? Danielle looked at the table. The leather folder was also gone. He must have taken it to the safe. Marina felt her stomach drop. Where's the safe? In his office, but I don't have the code. The seconds ticked by. Marina looked around. Drawers, cabinets, nothing. Wait. Danielle ran to the chair where Richard had sat, looked under the table. He sometimes leaves things here when he leaves in a hurry. She reached in, pulled out the leather folder. Found it. Marina took the folder, opened it with trembling hands. The parchment was inside, intact. She placed it on the table, took out her phone. Hold the ends. Danielle held the edges of the document. Marina photographed. 1 photo, 2, 3. Zoomed in on each line, zoomed in on the marginal symbols. Quick, cleaning crew arrives in 5 minutes. Marina kept photographing, turned the document over. The back had 3 more lines in pure Aramaic. Done. She put the parchment back in the folder. Danielle put it back under the table. Now what are you going to do? Marina opened the photos, zoomed in on the first line. The words became clear. She knew every symbol, every structure. I'm going to translate it tonight. And then what? Danielle grabbed her arm. Marina, he won't accept it, even if you translate it perfectly. He offered 100,000 in front of witnesses. Julia recorded everything. And you think he cares? Danielle lowered her voice. He already humiliated the manager who sued the company, destroyed the career of a director who confronted him. Marina put her phone away. Then I need more than a translation. Need what? Proof he can't deny. The two left the room. Danielle locked the door. They walked down the corridor in silence, reached the service elevator. That document, Marina said, he mentioned it's worth millions. Why? I don't know. He brought it from an auction in Europe last week. Marina pressed the ground floor button. The doors closed. If I prove I know exactly what this document is, if I translate not just the text, but explain the origin, the period, the historical value, she looked at Danielle. He won't be able to deny it. How are you going to do that in one night? The elevator descended, past the 30th floor, 20th, 10th. I still have my contacts, professors, researchers. Marina squeezed her phone in her pocket. Someone will know about that auction. The doors opened on the ground floor. Marina stepped out. Danielle held the door. Do you need help? I need you to get the video Julia recorded. She won't just give it to me. Then copy it from her phone. Invent an excuse. Danielle hesitated. 5 seconds. 10. All right. But promise me one thing. What? When you destroy his arrogance, let me watch. Marina smiled for the first time in hours. I promise. She left the building. Night had fallen over Sydney. The cold air of the avenue hit her face. Marina walked to the bus stop. Inside the crowded bus, she opened the photos again. Enlarged the first full line. Testamentum Domini de Sacris Reliquis, Anno M. CCIL. Dedicatum. Testament of our Lord concerning the sacred relics, dedicated in the year 1213. The second line had the interspersed Aramaic symbol. Marina knew it. It was a notation used by Catholic scribes, translating texts from the Middle East. She opened WhatsApp, searched for an old contact. Professor Graham Miller, University of Sydney. Last conversation 6 years ago. She typed, Professor, I need help with a document. It's urgent. 3 minutes later, he replied, Marina, you disappeared. I thought you'd left the field. I did, but I found something important. What kind of document? Marina sent the first photo. Waited. The 3 dots appeared, vanished, appeared again. Where did you get this? Long story. Do you recognize it? If it's authentic, this is an 11th century clerical testament, possibly related to the Fourth Crusade. Marina typed quickly. How much is it worth? Depends on the provenance, but documents like this have sold for millions of euros at European auctions. London, possibly, or Paris. Rome, maybe. Marina sent the photo of the back with the Aramaic. And this? Graham took longer to respond. 1 minute. 2. Marina, this is extremely rare clerical notation. Only 3 scribes in the 11th century used this pattern. If it's authentic, it could be talking about specific relics from the Holy Land. Her heart quickened. Can you help me with the full translation? I can, but it will take time. These symbols require historical context, comparison with other manuscripts. What if I translate it tonight? Silence. Then, you still have the talent, Marina, but you'll need references, specialized dictionaries, concordances. I still have some books. Then send me the translation when you're done. I'll review it. Marina got off the bus, walked 3 blocks to the boarding house, climbed the creaking steps, entered her 10-square-meter room. From under the bed, she pulled out 3 cardboard boxes. Inside, 15 books, Latin grammars, Aramaic dictionaries, concordances of medieval texts. She opened her old notebook. The screen flickered 3 times before turning on. Marina connected to the boarding house's internet, opened a blank document. 8:45 p.m. She had until tomorrow morning. The first line was easy, 10 minutes. The second required consultation with 2 dictionaries, 20 minutes. The third had a symbol she had never seen. She photographed it, sent it to Graham. He replied in 5 minutes with the exact reference. Marina typed, paused, consulted, typed more. Midnight turned into 1 a.m., 1 into 3. By 4:15, she had 7 complete lines translated. 2 more to go, but her eyes burned, her head felt heavy. She drank cold coffee. She continued. 5:30. The sun began to rise. Marina typed the last word, dedicated in eternal testimony of the sacred relics, brought from Jerusalem in the year of our Lord 1213. She reread it 3 times, checked every word, every symbol, every reference. Perfect. Sent it to Graham. Finished. Can you review? 20 minutes later. Marina, this is impeccable. Academic publication level. You haven't missed a thing. She smiled. Tears fell unbidden. Her phone rang. Danielle, I got the video. It's still in the group. I copied it. Send it to me. 3 seconds later, the file arrived. Marina opened it. Richard's voice echoed. I'll give you my whole month's salary if you translate this. She watched until the end. Every humiliation, every laugh, every cruel word. Then she saved it in 3 different places. Marina, what are you going to do now? She looked at the complete translation on the screen, looked at the video, looked at the scattered books. I'm going to set up a meeting with Richard. He won't agree to see you. He will. When I tell him I have the complete translation of the document worth millions. Silence on the other end. You did it? I did. And now he'll have to listen to me. Marina opened her email, typed to Richard Thompson's corporate address. Subject: Translation of Testamentum Domini. Delivery tomorrow at 2 p.m. Email body: As agreed, attached is the complete translation of the 1213 document. I await payment of $100,000 as per your recorded video offer. She attached the translation, attached a photo of the first translated line as a preview. Carbon copied Danielle and Julia. Her finger hovered over the send button. 1 click, message sent. Now it was time to wait for the reply and prepare for war. The reply arrived at 7 a.m. My office, 2 p.m. Bring the original document. Marina read it 3 times. No, please. No acknowledgement. Just an order. She replied, I will bring the complete translation, printed and referenced. The original document is with you. There was no response. Marina showered, put on the only smart clothes she still had. Black trousers with a small patch on the hem, a slightly yellowed white blouse, black shoes that pinched her left foot. It wasn't what she would have worn for an academic presentation years ago, but it would have to do. She printed the translation at the corner print shop, $10 for 12 pages. Each page had the original Latin line, followed by the English translation, footnotes explaining Aramaic symbols, historical references about the period. At the end, she added a 2-page addendum, analysis of authenticity and historical value. Everything was there: the document's probable origin, the scribe who possibly created it, its estimated value at international auctions, between 2 and 4 million euros. Marina put everything in a transparent folder called Danielle. He replied, meeting at 2. Can you tell the other executives? Already done. I told them it was an important presentation about the document. Frank and Julia confirmed their presence. Perfect. Marina hung up, looked at the clock. 11:15 a.m. She had time. She opened WhatsApp, sent a message to Professor Graham. If I need video call validation this afternoon, can you help? I can. What time? Between 2 and 3, I'll be available. Call me. Marina put her phone away, picked up the folder, left the boarding house. The day was overcast, with a light drizzle. She didn't have an umbrella. She arrived at the building at 1:40 p.m., 17 minutes early. Danielle was waiting in the lobby. He's nervous. Good. He called a lawyer. Marina stopped. A lawyer? I think he'll try to say the challenge wasn't serious, that it was a joke. Marina's stomach tightened. She had anticipated this. That's why she'd CC'd Danielle and Julia on the email. That's why she had the video. Did you bring a copy of the video? Danielle waved her phone. 3 copies. Email, cloud, and USB stick. The 2 entered the elevator. Marina saw her reflection in the metallic mirror. Deep circles under her eyes. Hair tied in a simple bun, but her eyes sparkled differently. 10th floor, 20th, 30th. What if he refuses to pay even with the translation? Danielle asked. Then I'll show the video. And if he says the video proves nothing, then I'll call Professor Graham. He'll validate my translation live. And even then, Danielle, Marina looked at her. I spent 7 years invisible. He'll see me today. The elevator opened on the 40th floor. They stepped out. The corridor was empty, silent, only the hum of the air conditioning. Danielle stopped in front of Richard's office door. He said for you to wait in the boardroom. He'll come down in 5 minutes with the lawyer. Probably. Marina entered the boardroom, the same one where she had been humiliated yesterday. The gleaming glass table, the crystal chandelier, the view of Sydney below. She placed the folder on the table, took out the translation, arranged the pages side by side, line by line, translation by translation. Frank entered first, stopped at the door when he saw Marina. What's she doing here? Meeting scheduled. Marina replied without looking up. Julia entered soon after, recognized Marina, immediately grabbed her phone. This is going to be good, she murmured. 2 executives entered, sat far from the head of the table. Danielle stood in the corner, as always. 2:03 p.m. Richard entered. A man in a gray suit walked beside him. Leather briefcase, spectacles. The lawyer. Richard stopped when he saw Marina at the head of the table. His nostrils flared. Who said you could sit there? Marina didn't get up. You scheduled a meeting to receive the translation. Here it is. She pushed the pages towards him. Richard didn't take them. Looked at the lawyer. The man approached the table, examined the first page. This is the complete translation, with notes, historical references, and an authenticity analysis. The lawyer leafed through 3 pages, 4, stopped at the 6th. She identified the scribe by the notation pattern, he murmured. Richard snatched the pages from his hand, read in silence. His eyes scanned quickly, his jaw clenched. A vein pulsed in his temple. Frank moved closer. Julia filmed. The executives leaned in. Richard threw the pages on the table. This proves nothing. Marina took a deep breath. It had begun. Richard pushed the pages to the side of the table. Anyone can invent a translation, put it through Google Translate, and pretend they know what they're doing. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Mr. Thompson, the translation appears to have technical rigor. Appears? Richard slammed the table. But how do I know it's correct? Marina kept her hands on her lap. They weren't trembling anymore. You can verify it with any specialist. Specialist? Richard scoffed. I hired the best translator in Sydney. He said this document was impossible to translate without laboratory analysis. Frank crossed his arms. How long did he ask for, boss? 3 weeks. And she shows up with this in 12 hours. Richard pointed to the pages. It's obviously a fraud. Julia stopped filming for 2 seconds, looked at Marina, went back to recording. The lawyer picked up one of the pages, read aloud. Testament of our Lord concerning the sacred relics, dedicated in the year 1213. Is this the first line? It is, Marina replied. Richard scoffed. Testament. The most obvious word in the entire document. A lucky guess. And the rest? The lawyer leafed through. She translated 9 lines, identified Aramaic symbols, dated the scribe. Any historian can do that. Any historian would take weeks, sir. Richard snatched the pages from the lawyer's hand. Read again. His ears turned red. He threw everything on the table with force. 2 sheets flew off. This is worthless. She hasn't proven the translation is correct. Marina opened the transparent folder, took out a second stack of papers. So, you want verification? A real specialist, not a cleaner pretending I was a linguistics professor. Marina's voice cut through the air. University of Sydney, 20 years career, specialization in ancient languages. Silence fell like a guillotine. Frank dropped his pen. Julia zoomed in. The 2 executives exchanged glances. Danielle smiled in the corner. Richard blinked 3 times. You, what? A professor, Marina stood up, doctorate candidate, certified translator. I published 17 academic articles on medieval manuscripts. She spread the second stack on the table, copies of diplomas, certificates, published articles, a photo of her receiving an award at an international conference. And you never asked, never looked at me, you only saw a cleaner. Richard picked up a diploma, read it. His hands trembled slightly. Why were you cleaning the floor? Because I needed to eat. And no one hires a 40-year-old professor in debt. The lawyer approached the table, examined the documents, looked at Marina, then back at Richard. Mr. Thompson, she has credentials. The translation could be correct. Could? Richard threw down the diploma. But I need absolute certainty. Marina took out her phone. Then I'll call someone who can certify it. She dialed, put it on speakerphone. 3 rings. A male voice answered. Marina? Professor Graham, are you available? I am. You can talk. Richard leaned in. Who is this? Professor Graham Miller, head of the Department of Ancient Languages at the University of Sydney, 50 years in the field, consultant to the National Museum. The voice on the phone continued. Marina sent me photos of the document yesterday. I reviewed her translation overnight. Frank moved closer to the phone. And? Is it correct? Impeccable. International journal publication level. She correctly identified the period, the scribe, even the probable origin of the parchment. Julia filmed the phone. The lawyer wrote something down. Richard remained motionless. Professor, Marina said, can you explain the value of this document? If it's authentic, and from the translation it appears to be, we're talking about a clerical testament related to the Fourth Crusade. Documents like this have sold for up to 4 million euros at European auctions. Frank let out a low whistle. The executives whispered. Danielle covered her mouth. 4 million, Richard finally spoke. Euros. That's about 25 million Australian dollars at the current exchange rate. The silence returned. Heavier this time, Marina continued. Professor, can you confirm my background? Marina Silva was one of the best students I ever had. She defended her master's with honors, started her doctorate with a full scholarship, published in international journals. She simply disappeared 7 years ago. I didn't disappear, Marina said softly. I just needed to survive. Richard looked at the lawyer. The man shook his head slightly. No way out. Professor Graham. Richard moved closer to the phone. This is Richard Thompson, CEO of the company. How can I be absolutely certain this translation is perfect? Simple. Take the original document, read the first line. Marina will translate it on the spot. I'll confirm over the phone if it's correct. Richard hesitated, looked at Marina, at the lawyer, at the executives who were watching everything. All right. He opened a drawer, took out the leather folder, removed the parchment, placed it on the table. First line. Marina didn't need to get closer. She had already memorized it. Testamentum Dominostre de Sacris Reliquis Anno MCCIL Dedicatum. Translation. Testament of our Lord concerning the sacred relics dedicated in the year 1213. The voice on the phone responded immediately. Correct. Perfect. Every word. Richard narrowed his eyes. Second line. Marina read the Latin. Translated. The professor confirmed. Third, she repeated. Perfect again. Fourth. Here there's an Aramaic symbol. Marina read. Paused at the symbol. This symbol represents eternal testimony. It's a specific notation of scribes who translated texts from the Holy Land. Only 3 scribes in the 11th century used this pattern. The professor chuckled on the other end. She memorized my 1,998 article. I wrote exactly that. Frank dropped his phone on the table. Julia stopped filming, began to applaud slowly. One executive joined, then another. Danielle clapped harder. The sound echoed in the room. Richard stood still. The parchment in his hands, the translation pages scattered, the professor's voice still on speakerphone. Mr. Thompson, the lawyer said softly. She met the challenge in front of witnesses, with independent verification. Richard slowly placed the parchment on the table. His hands were now visibly trembling. How much did I offer? No one answered. Marina took out her phone, opened the video Danielle had sent, pressed play. Richard's voice filled the room. I'll give you my entire salary for this month, $100,000, if you translate 3 lines. Marina paused the video. $100,000 you offered yesterday, at 6 in the evening, in this very room. The lawyer closed his briefcase. Mr. Thompson, technically she has a right. I know. Richard exploded, slammed his hand on the table. The leather folder jumped. He took a deep breath. Once, twice, 3 times. Everyone waited. Julia was the first to speak. I filmed everything yesterday. I have the full video on my phone. She opened her gallery, showed the screen to the lawyer. He watched for 15 seconds, nodded. Frank got up from his chair, walked to Marina. I laughed. He lowered his eyes. I'm sorry. Marina didn't respond, just looked at him. The two executives who had remained silent approached the table. One picked up the translation, read 3 pages, looked at the other. This is professional work, real stuff. The second executive turned to Richard. Boss, if she could translate this in 12 hours, imagine what else she can do. Danielle left the corner for the first time in 20 years. She walked to the head of the table, stood beside Marina. I knew it, she said. Always knew there was something different about her. Richard remained motionless, looking at the parchment. The entire room had turned against him. The lawyer put his pen back in his briefcase. Mr. Thompson, my professional recommendation is clear. Fulfill the agreement now, before this turns into a workplace dispute. Dispute? Richard finally looked up. Because of $100,000? Because of workplace humiliation, multiple witnesses, recorded video, unfulfilled formal offer. The lawyer closed his briefcase. She could ask for much more than $100,000 if this goes to court. Frank looked at Julia. She still held her phone. The video paused on the screen. We posted it in the company group, Frank mumbled. About 50 people have already seen it. Richard's jaw clenched. His hands formed fists on the table. One of the executives cleared his throat. Boss, if this leaks outside the company, the press will love it. Millionaire CEO humiliates cleaner, who was a university professor. Viral in 3 hours. Julia completed. The silence crushed the room. Marina remained standing, calm, waiting. Danielle picked up the parchment, examined it closely. $25 million, and you offered $100,000 as if it were a joke. Richard snatched the parchment from her hand. Enough. He opened a drawer, took out a checkbook. His hands trembled. The pen almost fell twice. Everyone watched in silence. The sound of the pen scratching the paper echoed. Richard tore off the check, placed it on the table and pushed it towards Marina. $100,000, as promised. Marina picked up the check, read it, verified the signature, folded it, put it in her pocket. Thank you. Her voice was firm, without emotion, without celebration. Richard expected something more, a laugh, a provocation, a victory speech. But Marina just stood there, looking him in the eyes. And that was worse than any words. Richard stood up, tried to regain his composure. All right, you got your money. Now you can go. Marina didn't move. I'm not finished yet. What do you mean? She picked up the last page of the translation, the authenticity analysis. Do you know how much you paid for this document? Richard crossed his arms. None of your business. 2 million euros at the London auction last week. Marina placed the page in front of him. I called the auction house this morning, confirmed it. The lawyer approached. How did you? Because I know 3 European curators, and they owe me favors from when I used to publish. Marina pointed to a specific paragraph. You were conned. This document isn't worth 25 million. It's worth at most 800,000 euros. Richard snatched the page. You're lying. I'm not. The parchment is authentic. The translation is correct, but the testament is incomplete. The second part is missing, the one that lists the specific relics. She paused. Without the second part, the value plummets. Frank looked at Richard. Boss, you bought it without checking. I trusted the specialist who said it was impossible to translate. Marina raised an eyebrow. He never translated it because he didn't want you to find out. Richard's face turned red, then purple. Are you saying I lost over €1 million? I'm saying you paid 3 times more than it's worth. The lawyer picked up the analysis, read in silence. His expression changed. She's right. Incomplete documents are common at auctions. Inexperienced buyers pay fortunes. Richard gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles turned white. Inexperienced, without proper consulting. The lawyer corrected. If you had hired someone qualified beforehand. He looked at Marina. The silence completed the sentence. Frank took 2 steps back. Julia stopped filming. The executives looked at the floor. Richard breathed heavily. His chest rose and fell rapidly. Get out of here. Marina didn't move. I said, get out of here. His voice echoed through the glass walls. Danielle flinched. Julia dropped her phone. The lawyer took a step back, but Marina remained firm. Eyes locked on his. I will leave. But first, a proposal. I don't want to hear anything from you. You need someone who understands ancient manuscripts, who can identify forgeries, who translates rare documents. Richard scoffed, a harsh, humorless sound. And you think I'd hire you after this? I'm not asking for a job. Marina took a business card from her pocket, placed it on the table. I'm offering consultancy. $300 an hour, when you need it. She turned her back, walked towards the door. Danielle opened the way. Frank, too. At the door, Marina stopped, looked back one last time. And, Mr. Thompson, the next time you see a cleaner, a concierge, a security guard, remember you know nothing about them, nothing about who they were, or who they still can be. She left. The glass door closed slowly. The sound echoed. Richard stood there, alone at the head of the table, the incomplete parchment in front of him, the check already gone, 120 people having seen the humiliation video. The lawyer picked up his briefcase. I'll send the invoice for my services. He left. Then Julia, then Frank, the two executives, one by one. Danielle was the last. At the door, she turned. Oh, Mr. Thompson, I'm also resigning. 20 years was long enough. The room became empty. Richard sat down, looked at the business card Marina had left. Marina Silva, translator and consultant in ancient manuscripts. He crumpled the card, threw it in the bin, then thought better of it, picked it back up, smoothed it out, put it in his wallet. Outside, Marina pressed the elevator button, the $100,000 check in her pocket. Danielle stood beside her, her phone ringing with messages from 3 museums wanting to hire her services. The elevator doors opened. She entered, saw her reflection in the metallic mirror. She was no longer an invisible cleaner. She was who she always was. Marina left the building. The sunlight hit her face. She stopped on the footpath, took a deep breath. Once, twice, 3 times. Danielle walked out right behind her, carried a box with her own belongings. I can't believe I did that. Marina looked at her. Regret it? Not one bit. Danielle laughed. A light, liberating laugh. 20 years putting up with that man. I should have left ages ago. The two walked down the avenue. The traffic noise, honking, people rushing everywhere. Marina took the check from her pocket, $100,000. She had dreamed of that amount for 7 years, imagined everything she would do. Now that it was there, it felt surreal. What are you going to do with the money? Danielle asked. Pay off the old debts first, then? Marina folded the check. Then I'll see. They stopped at a corner cafe, sat at an outdoor table. Marina ordered a cappuccino. Danielle ordered a juice. 3 museums messaged me, Marina said, looking at her phone. They want quotes for translations. Are you going to accept? I am, but now at a fair price. The cappuccino arrived. Marina took a sip. The coffee was hot, sweet, perfect. Danielle stirred her juice with a straw. You know what else struck me when you said he didn't know anything about people? It's true. We pass by others every day and don't really see them. I did it too, Danielle admitted. Saw you cleaning. Never asked your full name, where you came from, what you did before. Marina held the cup with both hands. Steam rose. Nobody asked. It was easier to be invisible. And now? Marina smiled. For the first time, a genuine smile. Now I exist again. Danielle's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her eyes widened. It's HR from the company. They want to know if I'll reconsider my resignation. Will you reconsider? Danielle blocked her phone, put it in her bag. No, I've decided. I'm going to look for something better. The two finished their drinks in silence, a comfortable silence. Then they stood up, hugged on the footpath. Thank you, Marina said. For what? For standing by me when no one else did. Danielle squeezed the hug. Thank you for showing me it's possible to fight back. They separated. Each went their own way. Marina walked to the bank, deposited the check, saw her balance increase, numbers she hadn't seen in years. She left the bank. Her phone rang. Professor Graham. Marina, there's a manuscript restoration project at the National Library. They pay well. Want me to recommend you? She smiled. I do. 5 days later, Richard Thompson sat alone in his office, the desk empty. No executives had come to ask for a meeting that morning. His phone rang. It was the owner of the London auction house. They wanted the document back. They had discovered that the second part of the testament was at another auction. They offered to buy it back for half the price. Richard hung up without answering. The video had leaked, not just within the company. Someone had posted it on social media. 60,000 views in 3 days. Comments tearing him apart. Arrogant CEO humiliated by cleaner. Karma exists. He deserved it. Frank resigned. Julia too. 2 directors left for rival companies. HR reported difficulty hiring new staff. No one wanted to work with him. Marina, meanwhile, arrived for the first time at the National Library as a contracted consultant, no longer through service entrances, but through the main entrance. She wore new tailored trousers, an impeccable white blouse, comfortable shoes that didn't pinch, carried a leather folder with her materials. Inside, dictionaries, magnifying lenses, a notebook. Professor Marina, a man with a grey beard, extended his hand. "I'm the curator of the manuscript section, Professor." She hadn't heard that title in 7 years. "Pleasure." He led her to a climate-controlled room. On the table, 3 15th-century parchments. They needed urgent translation for an international exhibition. Marina put on white gloves, picked up the magnifying glass, leaned over the first document. The letters were familiar, the structure known, the symbols clear. She began to read aloud, translating line by line. The curator wrote everything down. 2 assistants recorded. "Impressive," the curator said after an hour. "You read it as if it were your native tongue." "It is, in a way," Marina replied. The work took 4 hours. When she finished, she had 3 documents completely translated. Historical analysis of each. Conservation recommendations. The curator signed the check, $15,000. As per the quote, Marina took the check, $15,000 for 4 hours of work, more than a year's salary as a cleaner. "Are there other projects?" she asked. "Several. And now that we've seen your work, you'll be our first choice." Marina left the National Library at 6 p.m. The sun was setting. She walked to a restaurant, not a cheap buffet, a proper restaurant, with tablecloths and a printed menu. She ordered a dish that cost $40. She ate slowly, savoring it without rush. Her phone vibrated. A message from Professor Graham. "University of Sydney wants you as a visiting lecturer. Next semester. Interested?" She typed, "Very." 2 weeks later, Marina returned to the building where she had worked. Not to clean, but to pick up documents she had left at HR. She entered through the lobby. The security guard recognized her. "Miss Marina, I barely recognized you. You look different." "I am." As she waited for the elevator, she saw a familiar scene. A man in a suit yelled at a cleaning lady. The woman had her eyes downcast, holding a trembling mop. "Are you stupid? I asked you to clean before 9. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't want excuses. I want you to do the job properly." People in the lobby watched. No one did anything. Marina walked to the man, stood beside the employee. "Excuse me." The man turned, looked Marina up and down. "Who are you?" "Someone who knows the cleaning routine of this building." Marina looked him in the eyes. "And I know this floor can only be cleaned after 9, company policy, because of morning meetings." The man frowned. "So what? So what is that? You're demanding the impossible and humiliating someone who's just following the rules." The employee looked up, surprised, hopeful. The man took a step towards Marina. "This is none of your business." "It is, because I've been in her shoes." Marina didn't back down. "And I know exactly what it's like to hear people like you." The security guard approached. 3 people stopped to watch. "Are you going to leave or am I calling security?" the man threatened. Marina took out a business card, offered it to the employee. "If he continues, call me. I know employment rights and lawyers who love cases like this." The employee took the card with trembling hands. "Read it." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Marina nodded, looked at the man one last time. Respect costs nothing, but the lack of it can cost a lot. She entered the elevator. The doors closed. The last thing she saw was the employee holding the card as if it were gold. In the elevator mirror, Marina saw her reflection. She was no longer the invisible woman of weeks ago. She was someone who had a voice, who used that voice, who defended those who couldn't defend themselves. She had returned, not to the place she was before, but to a better place. The doors opened on the 10th floor. Marina stepped out, collected her documents, signed the final termination agreement. When she left the building, the sun shone brightly. She put on her sunglasses, walked down the avenue. Her phone rang. "Another project, another museum, another chance," Marina answered, smiling. Life had begun again. If this story touched your heart in any way, if you felt Marina's injustice, her turning point, her victory, please leave a like. This simple gesture shows me I'm on the right track, bringing stories that truly matter. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from now. Believe me, I read every comment carefully and make sure to reply to anyone who takes a moment to interact here. Your participation makes all the difference to me. If you believe in the power of stories like this, stories that move you, that inspire, that show it's never too late to fight back, subscribe to the channel. We're just at the beginning of this journey, and every new subscription is the fuel that keeps me going, bringing these narratives to you. I'm counting on your help with this mission, and don't leave yet. I've left 2 amazing stories on the screen for you to choose and watch now. Click on one of them and come with me for the next emotion, I'll see you in the next video.